I didn't stumble onto the clearing. I was led there. We were deep in enemy territory, pinned between two rivers and an artillery grid no one had mapped right. The jungle had been swallowing our squad for 4 days, eating our compass, our bearings, even the stars at night. We were stretched thin, sleep-starved, half our gear soaked or rusted. Mosquitoes louder than bullets. Vines like wire. No path forward, and no trail behind. Then one morning, the fog came early. Not like normal jungle mist, this was low, dense, pale. Too pale. It hugged the ground like it was searching for something. And something about it pulled. Daniels was the first to veer off. Said he saw something, maybe a glint of metal, maybe a trail. I followed because we were supposed to stay in pairs. I thought maybe he'd found a way out. Instead, he led me straight into it. The clearing. Perfectly round. Too perfect. No undergrowth. No leaves. No insects. Just grass, trimmed short like someone had been tending it. And at the center, crosses. Dozens of them. Wooden. Weathered. Leaning in strange angles like they were listening to one another. I froze. Daniels didn't. He walked in like he'd been there before. Like it was familiar. I followed, heart pounding harder than it should have. My boots barely made a sound in that place. The air was too thick to echo. I approached the first cross. No name. Just a date. July 14, 1968. I felt something in my chest tighten. The next one, July 15th. The next, July 16th. No names. No ranks. No tags. Just a slow, quiet calendar made of graves. And then I saw it. Toward the far edge of the clearing. Newer cross. Sharper edges. Fresh wood. My name. Sergeant Caleb Arth Monroe. July 18, 1968. 3 days from now. Same middle initial. Same spelling. Even the blood type carved faintly beneath the date. The ground in front of it was still soft. I didn't move for a long time. Daniels stood beside me, looking down at the same cross. Then he spoke. Yours too. I turned slowly. He lifted his hand. Held up a dog tag. It wasn't mine. Harper, DL. I didn't ask if he'd found Harper's grave too. I knew the answer. And I realized, we weren't the first to come here. Maybe not even the 100th. Daniels knelt. Reached toward the ground like he meant to dig. Stop, I said, more breath than voice. He looked up. Eyes hollow. Voice calm. It's already waiting. I backed away. Turned. But the fog had closed in behind us. The jungle was gone. Only the clearing remained. And the dates kept going. I tried to count them. The graves. One by one, row by row, starting from the oldest. But every time I reached a certain number, 50, maybe 60, I'd lose track. Not because I miscounted. Because something shifted. The rows would curve. The spacing would change. New crosses I hadn't seen before would appear in the gaps. Some didn't have dates. Just names. Or initials. Or a single word carved where the name should have been. Returned. Listening. Undug. That last one stuck with me. The idea of a grave that hadn't been dug yet, not because the person hadn't died, but because they were already walking inside it. I started to feel sick. The fog pressed in heavier now, turning the light flat and silver. Like moonlight in the middle of the day. Time felt thinner here. My watch had stopped ticking. Not frozen, ticking backward. Daniels hadn't moved. Still crouched beside Harper's cross. still holding the tag like it was a compass. He looked up at me. "You remember that ridge patrol outside Quang Tri?" "Yeah. That happened 2 weeks ago, right?" I nodded. He frowned. Looked down at the grave again. "My cross says July 17th. That's tomorrow." "No," he swallowed. "That's 2 weeks ago." I felt something in my chest tighten again. Like my ribs were shrinking. Daniels dropped the tag. It hit the grass and made no sound. I turned and walked. Fast. No plan, no direction. Just out. I expected vines, roots, maybe tree limbs, but there was nothing. Just more grass. More crosses. Every step I took seemed to lead me past another grave I hadn't seen before. Some bore names I didn't recognize. Others I did. Lieutenant Morrison, July 19th. Corporal Felix, July 21st. Doc Avery, July 22nd. Private Art Daniels, July 17th. I stopped. Looked back. But Daniels was gone. Not just vanished, erased. There was no cross with his name now. No fog where he stood. No footprints in the grass. Like the clearing had swallowed the memory of him, not just the man. I reached into my shirt and pulled my tags out again. Held them tight. Pressed them against the wooden face of my grave. They fit perfectly into the grooves. Like the cross had been carved around them. Like it had been waiting. And carved into the base, so small I hadn't seen it before. "You will come back to finish this." I stepped back. And the jungle returned all at once. It hit like a wave, noise, color, heat. The jungle roared back into existence. Cicadas screamed from the canopy. The smell of mud and gun oil and old blood filled my nose. Sweat reappeared on my skin like it had just remembered its job. Somewhere in the distance, a Huey chopped through the sky, low and fast. The world was moving again. But I wasn't sure I was in it. I stumbled back into camp looking like hell, dirt-streaked, eyes wide. The others barely noticed. A few nods, someone handed me a canteen. No one asked where I'd been. No one mentioned Daniels. That scared me more than the clearing. Because I remembered him. But they didn't. Not Harper. Not Vasquez. Not even the lieutenant. It was like he'd been snatched out of the timeline and everything had folded neatly around the missing space. I spent that night wide awake, sitting by the fire, staring at my boots. I checked my tags every 15 minutes. Still me. Still Monroe. Still July 18th. But the letters looked heavier somehow. Like they were sinking into the metal. In the morning, Harper was gone. No one had seen him leave. His gear was still in place, boots neatly aligned, rifle oiled and ready. But his cot was empty. I didn't go looking for him. I already knew where he was. I already knew the date on his cross. Later that day, I opened my rucksack and found a note folded between my rations. Written in my own handwriting. But I hadn't written it. "You're not lost. You're being remembered." That word, remembered, felt heavier than it should have. I stared at it for a long time. Because I knew what it meant. The clearing wasn't a vision. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a haunting. It was memory. Not mine. Someone else's. And somehow, I was walking through it like a photograph that hadn't finished developing. And my name, my death, was a detail waiting to be filled in. I started keeping notes. Not the kind you turn into command, the kind you write in the dark when no one's looking. The kind you fold up tight and hide in your sock or your helmet liner. The kind that's more confession than report. They were short at first. Just timestamps. Quick thoughts. A word I didn't want to forget. Fog returned during night watch, but only I saw it. Crosses don't cast shadows after midnight. Harper's name was on the log this morning. No one noticed. But then I started hearing things. Whispers. Not voices, exactly. Not English, not Vietnamese. Just shapes in sound. Air moving wrong. Words with edges that scraped against the inside of my ears. Sometimes they'd echo around the trees during patrols. Other times, they'd come from inside the tents. Once, I heard them in my own voice. That was the first time I dropped my rifle. The others didn't laugh. They didn't say anything. Because the second I bent down to pick it up, the jungle behind me breathed. Not wind. Not animals. A breath. Long, slow. Listening. I kept my notes going. Pages stuffed deep in my boot. I started titling each one like a journal entry. Not by date, by grave. 2 days before the cross. The shift. The one with my eyes. Cross number 42. That last one. I don't like to remember it. Cross number 42 was different. It wasn't in the clearing. I found it in my bunk. Middle of the night. Just sitting there. A perfect, palm-sized version. Same wood, same grain, same slanted handwriting. No name. Just the date, July 18th. My date. Still holding steady. Still waiting. The next morning, it was gone. I didn't tell anyone. Because by then, I'd realized the truth. You only get erased if someone remembers you too well. Daniels disappeared because I followed him. Harper vanished because I noticed his cross. The clearing isn't just a list of the dead. It's a trap for memory. And the more I write, the more I remember, the faster it comes for me. But I can't stop. I don't want to stop. Because someone has to remember. Even if it means becoming part of it. I began walking different paths through the jungle. Not patrol routes. Not trails on the map. Just quiet, aimless drifts when the air was thick and the trees stood too still. I told the others I was scouting for high ground, or setting claymores, or checking for tripwires. They stopped asking after the third time. I wasn't looking for anything. I was listening. Every few hundred feet, I'd stop and close my eyes. Not to pray. To remember. That's what it wanted, not attention, not fear, memory. I could feel it, coiled around the trees like a net, waiting for someone to care. To notice. That's how it grew. That's how it reached back through time, sinking its teeth into days that hadn't happened yet. I began to smell it before I saw it. Old wood, damp earth, and something that didn't belong, like ink that had been set on fire, sharp and chemical. And just like before, the fog would creep in at the corners of my vision. Not sudden. Just patient. And there it would be again. The clearing. Each time, slightly different. More graves. A new tree line. A path that curved where it hadn't before. One time, I found a radio in the center, half buried, still whispering static. I knelt beside it and tuned the dial with shaking fingers. It locked onto a signal without a number. And from it came my voice. Reading my notes. Word for word. Even the parts one hadn't written yet. That was the first time I vomited into the grass. Not because I was scared. Because I understood. The clearing wasn't showing the future. It was copying it. Writing it in reverse. Like a mirror of what will be, carved out of what has already been noticed. I left the radio. Didn't even try to smash it. Felt like it would only start playing louder if I did. The next morning, I found one of the grave dates scratched into the wall of our mess tent. July 20th, Vasquez. It wasn't there the night before. But Vasquez saw it. Stared at it. Didn't say a word. Just looked at me, like he'd been waiting for me to notice too. Then he reached into his shirt, pulled out his tags, and handed them to me. "I won't need these soon," he said. I held them. Felt the weight. Felt how cold they were. He turned and walked toward the tree line. Not rushed. Not scared. Like he'd already been buried once, and was just going back to straighten the dirt. I followed. Not to stop him. To see if the cross had already changed. And when I got there, it had. The date was no longer July 20th. Now it said, July 19th. Today. And the dirt in front of it was moving. I didn't speak. Didn't call his name. Just stood there, watching the soil breathe like something beneath it had been dreaming of him. Vasquez stepped forward without hesitation. He didn't kneel. He didn't cry. He crouched beside the grave like it was a man he'd known all his life, whispered something I couldn't hear, and placed his helmet down with both hands, careful and slow, like he was crowning it. Then he turned to me. "You have to stop remembering me," he said. The words felt heavy, not like guilt, like instruction. Like a warning from a man who had already slipped too far into the fog and only had one message left to carry back. I took a step forward, confused, my mouth already forming a question, but he shook his head. No one disappears until they're remembered too well. And with that, he was gone. Not vanished, not erased like Daniel's had been, gone in the way a flame goes out. Not with drama. Just with finality. No wind. No sound. Just space where something had been. I dropped to my knees beside the grave. His name was gone now. No carving. No date. Just an empty cross. Waiting. I looked behind me. The clearing had changed again. There were fewer graves. The rows had pulled in tighter, closer together like ribs closing around a heart. Some crosses had snapped. Some were upside down. The fog moved in circles now, like it was circling me. And in the center of it all, my cross. Still there. Still sharp. Still clean. But different now. It wasn't alone. Next to it, a second one. Same shape. Same wood. No name. But the date? July 22nd. 2 days from now. The day after mine. That was new. That was wrong. The clearing had always moved toward death, not away from it. So why this? Why another marker? Why after me? And in that moment, I understood something I didn't want to know. I wouldn't just die here. I'd come back. Or worse. Someone else would take my place. I ran. Not away from the clearing, but deeper into it. I needed to see how far it went. How many names it had stolen. How many were still waiting. The fog didn't push back this time, it parted, opened up like it wanted me to keep going. The crosses thinned out, and then started to change. They weren't all wood anymore. Some were made of rusted steel. Bent rebar. Pieces of helmets hammered flat. One was carved into the side of a tree, still alive, the bark growing over the name like scar tissue. They stretched on forever. The further I went, the more the world lost its grip on sense. One grave was inside the twisted wreck of a crashed chopper, the blades still turning, slowly, without wind. Another stood in the center of a ring of dog tags, hundreds of them hanging from bamboo like wind chimes. They clinked as I walked by, and I swear they chimed a melody I knew, a cadence from boot camp, sung backward. There were graves in the trees. Hung like fruit. Small crosses strung on fishing line, dangling from branches with names etched so faint I could only read them when the fog passed over. One of them had my face carved into it. Not a name. Not a date. Just my face, wide-eyed, mouth open like it was still screaming. I backed away, stumbled, fell onto a pile of soaked letters. All addressed to me. Different handwriting. Different ink. Some sealed. Some torn. They smelled like the fire we lit the day Daniels disappeared, copper, paper, and the kind of smoke that sticks to your memory more than your clothes. I grabbed one and opened it. Inside, a page from my logbook. But I never wrote it. Day before I forgot who I was. Think I died this time. Unsure. Going to try again tomorrow. Another letter said. Don't write this down. If you write it, you bring it closer. I stood. Stumbled through the graves like a drunk through a dream. The clearing kept folding. Kept reshaping itself. Kept leading me forward. And then I stopped. Because I found a campfire. Still burning. And around it, them. My squad. Daniels. Harper. Vasquez. Even Felix, dead 6 weeks ago in an ambush I remember patching him up from. They were all there. Silent. Not eating. Not speaking. Just staring into the flame. I stepped forward. Daniels looked up. His eyes weren't eyes anymore. Just empty coin slots, as if his face had been spent. Sit, he said. I did. Because part of me already knew this fire was mine. And it had been burning before I got there. And would keep burning long after I left. If I ever did. Daniels reached into the fire. Not with caution. Not with fear. Just slow, like a man dipping his hand into warm water. He pulled something out, not burning, not even smoking. It was a book. My logbook. Bound in the same dark canvas. Pages curled from humidity, edges blackened. He handed it to me without a word. I hesitated, but only for a second. It was heavier than I remembered. When I opened it, the pages weren't filled with my writing. Not all of it. Some were letters I never wrote. Some were entries from other hands, older, shakier, or tighter and neater. Others looked like they'd been etched by a knife. But every page started the same way. I saw my own grave. The dates varied. The names changed. But the story, the pattern, was always the same. Find the clearing. See the cross. Watch the date move. Write it down. Disappear. And always, just before the final entry, the same sentence, inked in red. Whatever you do, don't remember me. I flipped to the last page. Blank. The kind of blank that wasn't waiting to be written on, the kind that already knew what would be there. I looked up. The squad was still there. Daniels now sitting cross-legged. Vasquez leaned forward, arms on knees, mouth moving without sound. Harper staring through me like I wasn't even real. And then I saw myself. Across the fire. Sitting exactly as I was, hands on the book, head tilted, breathing slow. Same uniform. Same cut above the eyebrow from 3 nights ago. Same missing button on the left sleeve. Same eyes. Except, mine weren't hollow. His were. I dropped the book. The fire didn't flicker. The copy of me across the flames blinked once, stood, and walked backward into the fog, never breaking eye contact, not even for a second. And I understood. That wasn't me yet. That was the part of me that would stay. The part the clearing would keep, to help guide the next poor bastard who wandered in. It had happened before. It would happen again. And every time, the faces change, but the fire, the fog, the story stays the same. I stood and turned to leave. No one followed. No one spoke. The fire kept burning. Pages kept turning somewhere deep in the trees. I walked until I was back in camp. No one noticed I was gone. Felix waved to me from the mess line like he hadn't died in a trench screaming for morphine. And in that moment, I knew. I hadn't escaped the clearing. I just brought it with me. That night, I didn't sleep. Didn't even try. I sat under the canopy outside the tents, watching the shadows shift on the canvas walls as the oil lamp flickered in the wind. The jungle pressed in from all sides, but not with noise, with silence. Like it was holding its breath again. Waiting. I kept thinking about the other me. The one at the fire. The one with my hands, my voice, my scars, but none of my soul. And I realized something terrifying. That version of me hadn't looked trapped. It looked settled. Like it had accepted the weight of the clearing. Like it had stopped resisting. Like it belonged. And that meant one thing: if I stayed here long enough, if I kept remembering, if I kept writing, that would be me. Not killed in battle. Not lost to time. Swallowed. Rewritten into a version the clearing could use. A memory that doesn't fade, just loops. I pulled the logbook from my pack. The real one. Mine. Or at least the one I started with. I flipped to the last written page. It ended mid-sentence. Cross has changed again. Date still moving. One name added below mine. Unreadable. Possibly. That was where I stopped. I didn't remember stopping. But the pencil was still tucked inside. I thought about tearing the page out. Throwing it into the fire. Burning the whole damn book and forgetting every name, every grave, every date. But I couldn't. Because I knew that's how it wins. Not when you remember, but when you forget on purpose. When you look at a man and pretend you didn't see his name on a cross 3 days ago. When you wake up and Vasquez is gone, and you say nothing, because saying something means it happened. And once it's real, the clearing claims it. So I kept the logbook. But I didn't write in it. Not yet. I walked down to the edge of camp, to the place where the jungle always felt too quiet, too symmetrical, like someone had drawn the tree line by hand. And there it was. The fog. Thin. Waiting. I didn't enter it. Just stood at the edge and spoke aloud. I remember you. Nothing answered. But the fog shifted. Like it bowed. Not out of respect. But recognition. Then it pulled back. And the jungle breathed again. Birdsong returned. The trees rustled. And somewhere behind me, the cook shouted that breakfast was on. I turned and walked back to the world. But I left something behind in that fog. A truth I couldn't carry anymore. The knowledge that I'd seen my own grave. And still hadn't died. Word started spreading through camp about a missing patrol. Not ours, another unit. 3 men gone without a trace. No radio chatter, no gunfire, no bodies. Just footprints that led into a ravine and stopped. I didn't need to hear more. I already knew where they'd gone. The clearing was hungry again. It always is after someone escapes it. It needs to replace what it loses. A balance. A debt. I sat at my bunk, flipping through the logbook without reading. Just feeling the weight of the pages. Every entry heavier than the last. Not because of what was written, but because of what hadn't been. So much I couldn't explain. Couldn't record. Because writing it makes it real. And the clearing reads what you write. I heard a whisper that night. Not a voice, just a sound, like pages turning somewhere behind me. I turned fast. Nothing. But the air smelled like damp wood and old pencil shavings. Like a schoolroom that had been locked up for years, and someone finally opened the door. The smell of unfinished memory. I walked outside. Camp was quiet. Too quiet. Not the kind of quiet that means sleep, the kind that means absence. I counted cots. Too many were empty. No one on watch. No voices in the tents. No boots by the flap. Just me. And the fog, curling in from the tree line. Thicker this time. Bold. Like it knew I wouldn't run. Like it knew I couldn't. I stepped forward. Into it. Not fast. Not afraid. But ready. Because I needed answers. Because I needed to see what was beyond the graves, beyond the fire, beyond the version of me that was still sitting in that clearing, staring into the same flames I couldn't forget. The fog wrapped around me like fabric. Soft. Suffocating. Then it cleared. And I was somewhere new. No crosses. No fire. Just jungle. Quiet. Breathing. And ahead of me, a wall of mirrors. Dozens of them. Some cracked. Some warped. Some fogged with breath. And in each one, me. Different uniforms. Different wounds. One with bandages over his eyes. One missing a hand. One sobbing. One laughing. All of them staring back. All of them trapped behind the glass. Except one. One leaned forward and spoke. And though the glass didn't move, the words came through. "You're not here to escape." I shook my head. "No. You're here to remember." I nodded. He pressed a hand to the inside of the mirror. I did the same. Cold glass. Smooth. Then he whispered. "You're almost ready to write the last page." I opened my eyes, and the mirrors were gone. So was the jungle. So was the fog. I was standing in the clearing again. But this time, it was different. The crosses were all gone. Every single one. Not broken. Not buried. Just, gone. The clearing wasn't empty, though. In place of the graves were chairs. Wooden. Old. Some missing legs. Some upright, some tipped over. Dozens of them, facing different directions, not arranged like for a ceremony, but like people had once sat down in a rush, in a panic, or in grief, and then never stood back up. At the very center of them all, one chair still warm. Still rocking slightly. The moment I stepped toward it, the wind picked up. Only there wasn't any wind. The grass didn't move. The trees didn't sway. But I heard it, felt it. And it wasn't wind at all. It was pages. Turning. Pages turning somewhere beneath the ground. Beneath my boots. The whole clearing was a book. A massive, open book written in soil and names and footsteps and memory. And I had walked across half the story. I looked down and saw faint lettering rising from the ground under my feet, each step bringing a new line into focus. Not words I recognized. Not at first. But then. They began to match. Match entries I had written. Match things I had thought but never said. Match dreams I never told anyone. He wonders if he's next. He already knows he is. The fog is not a place. The fog is a mind. And it's not his. There's more than one Monroe in this story. There always was. I knelt. Ran my hand across the soil. Felt the pulse again. Slower now. More tired. Like something under there was reading too. And it was reaching the end. The chair creaked behind me. I stood, turned, and this time, I sat. Not because I was ready. Because I was expected. And when I sat down, something clicked beneath me. Like a tape recorder button. Like a trigger. And in that moment, I felt it all. All the names. All the lives. All the deaths. All the remembering and forgetting and writing and erasing. And then, I spoke. Not with my mouth. With every version of me that had ever stepped into this place. And I said, "This is the last story you get. After this, I'm taking it with me." And the clearing listened. The fog held its breath. And somewhere beyond the trees, I swear I heard the jungle whisper back. "Then write it right." And so I did. I'm still doing it now. And I won't stop. Until every page is filled. Until every grave is remembered. Until the last name is mine. It's strange how quiet the end feels. Not peaceful. Not comforting. Just still. Like even the jungle understands this is the final chapter. That the remembering is almost over. I don't know how long I've been sitting here. The sky doesn't change anymore. It's always that same dull, pre-dawn gray. Timeless. Weightless. The kind of light that could last forever, or end in a blink. The logbook is full now. Every page scratched with my handwriting, though I swear I don't remember writing most of it. Some entries are dated before I was born. Some mention names I've never said out loud. Some are addressed to people I'm sure I never met, but the way the words fall on the page, it's like they knew me better than I knew myself. One entry just says, "You're the last one. Leave the chair warm." I close the book gently. Set it on the ground. It sinks a little into the earth, not buried, not taken. Just accepted. The clearing shifts again. No fog this time. No graves. Just the jungle pulling back like a curtain. Revealing what it had hidden all along. A path. Straight. Narrow. Lit by something I can't see. Not daylight. Not firelight. Just memory. Alive and moving. Calling me forward. I stand. My legs ache. My boots feel heavier than they should, like I've been walking in someone else's steps for too long. I turn back for a moment. The chair is already gone. Not vanished. Just, no longer needed. The fire's out. The fog's gone. The story's told. But just as I take that first step down the path, I hear it. Faint. Behind me. Footsteps. Someone else entering the clearing. Someone new. A fresh voice. A fresh memory. And I realize. This place never ends. Only the pages do. But the book? The book keeps writing itself. So I don't say goodbye. I don't look back. I just walk. Into the quiet. Into the path that remembers me. And with every step, I leave behind a version of myself still whispering in the trees. Still warning. Still waiting. Still watching. Because in the end, the only way to truly leave this place is to leave behind a story someone else can follow. And hope, pray, they write a better one than I did. I don't know how far the path took me. Miles, maybe. Or minutes. It didn't matter. Time wasn't real in that stretch of space, only the rhythm of footsteps, the soft thud of boots against earth, and the distant echo of voices I had once known. Some called my name. Others didn't. Some just breathed, like wind through dead leaves, saying nothing, but meaning everything. The further I went, the lighter I felt. Not like floating. Like forgetting. I couldn't remember the name of the man I watched die behind the claymore last week. Couldn't recall the face of the kid who handed me coffee every morning and asked about home. Couldn't remember home. And still I walked. Because the memory wasn't mine anymore. It was in the dirt. In the wood. In the pages. In the clearing. All I had left was forward. Until I saw it. One final cross. Just one. Not buried in the ground. Not stuck in the mud. Standing upright in the middle of the path like a signpost. No grave beneath it. No name. Just one word carved where the name should be. Returned. Below that, a date. Today. No blood. No bones. Just the weight of arrival. I stood in front of it for what felt like hours. Then longer. Waiting for a message. A voice. A door to open. But none came. Because this wasn't a warning. It wasn't a memory. It wasn't a trap. It was a receipt. Proof that something had made it all the way through. That something had walked every inch of the story and laid it down, piece by piece, without being taken. I looked at my hands. Still mine. Still whole. Still shaking. Then I reached forward and touched the word. The wood felt warm. Not alive, but recently held. I stepped around it. Kept walking. And behind me, I heard the final sound. A pen. Scratching. Somewhere just beneath the soil. Writing one last line I would never read. But I didn't need to. Because I already knew what it said. He remembered. And for the first time in what felt like centuries, I let myself forget. And that was the end of it. Not a gunshot. Not an explosion. Not a scream echoing through the jungle. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels earned. Like the world exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Like something ancient, patient, and hidden finally closed its eyes. I didn't go back to camp. I didn't need to. Whatever waited for me there wasn't real anymore. Maybe it never was. Maybe the camp was just another room in the clearing, another page in the book. A place to hold the before, until the after had somewhere to land. And this? This was the after. No calendar. No rank. No orders. Just the weight of being remembered. The weight of knowing what most men never get to. That there are places in this world where time bleeds. Where memory is heavier than lead. Where your name might outlive your body, and your body might never leave the ground it was whispered into. And if you find one of those places, you don't get out unchanged. You leave behind a version of yourself. Not because it's taken, but because it's needed. Because someone else will come. They always do. Wandering through mud and radio static, chasing echoes that feel too familiar. Looking for meaning in the fog. Looking for someone who might still remember. And when they do, when they arrive at the edge of the clearing with shaking hands and quiet breath, they'll find a chair still warm. A page still blank. And a voice, maybe mine, maybe yours, maybe one no one ever knew, whispering. Write it down. It's your turn now. And so it goes. Again. And again. And again. Until no one is forgotten. And every grave has been remembered. At least. Once. And now, it's over. Really over. Not the kind of over that comes with trumpets or folded flags or boots lined in rows. The kind that comes with stillness. That deep, bone-sinking stillness where even memory dares not stir. I don't know what's left of me now. Not the man who walked into Vietnam. Not the soldier who found the first cross. Not the echo who sat at the fire with his own hollow eyes. I am what remains when a story is told too many times. When names are spoken until they lose their shape. When ghosts stop knocking because the door's already open. But there's peace in that. A strange kind. Like finding your own signature in a book you didn't write, and realizing the story still makes sense. I walk now. Through a jungle that no longer fights me. No fog. No footsteps behind. Just green and wind and soil that feels familiar beneath my boots. Sometimes I see faces in the trees. Reflections in puddles. Not frightening. Not sorrowful. Just there. I walked down to the edge of camp, to the place where the jungle always felt too quiet, too symmetrical, like someone had drawn the tree line by hand. And there it was. The fog. Thin. Waiting. I didn't enter it. Just stood at the edge and spoke aloud. I remember you. Nothing answered. But the fog shifted. Like it bowed. Not out of respect. But recognition. Then it pulled back. And the jungle breathed again. Birdsong returned. The trees rustled. And somewhere behind me, the cook shouted that breakfast was on. I turned and walked back to the world. But I left something behind in that fog.